Hey everyone, I'm Ron De Jesus, Field CPO at Transcend. The following is a conversation with Dan Nechita, Head of Cabinet for Dragos Tudorache, a key member of Parliament here in the EU and co-rapporteur of the EU AI Act. Dan was instrumental to the AI Act during last year's trilogue negotiations, and I'm excited to learn more about what happened behind the scenes of this groundbreaking piece of legislation. This is Transcend Field Trips. Dan, thank you so much for joining me. I know you've had a busy week at the IAPP AI Global Governance Conference here in Brussels. And you were on a panel yesterday. How'd that go?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Ron. It's a pleasure to be with you. Well, look, it was a panel. It was a good panel, good discussion on the Artificial Intelligence Act.
Which is top of mind for privacy professionals around the world. Yeah,
exactly, and quite surprisingly a good presence. You know, it was the last panel of the day, and the big room was pretty full. So it was good. I hope you enjoyed the conference too. It was good.
I did, and if you can command a full, audience at the end of the day, you're a top biller. So
I think it was them, the organizers, but I was happy to see the room wasn't empty.
Yeah. Working for Dragos Tudorache, he's a key member of Parliament. He was co-rapporteur of the AI Act. What's it like working with him, especially on this groundbreaking piece of legislation?
Well, Dragos, first of all, is a good friend. I'll start with a short story. We met when I was still living in the US. I was lobbying the Romanian government.
Okay.
Sat down with him and the Prime Minister. And said, I have all these ideas. And Dragos said, well, we have ideas of our own, we don't have the people. So he recruited me first time in government. We did a lot of good stuff there in government. We became good friends. So every cabinet in the Parliament is unique. Mm-hmm. It's a team. It's a small team. It's like a little startup. All 700 and some members have their own little team, and they do it one way or another. Okay. Dragos and I had a very, very good dynamic. And we focused on artificial intelligence from day one in the mandate. So he was the chair. We lobbied hard to establish a committee on artificial intelligence. He chaired that committee. So for 2 years, we did hearings on artificial intelligence and everything.
And this is when AI was still not really top of mind for folks, right?
Well, I guess AI is not new, it's not something new. It just wasn't that popular because we didn't have generative AI and everybody playing with the chatbot to see exactly how, what that means. But it was still, for the Parliament, it was new. So we spent a few years learning through this committee and doing hearings with experts, educating ourselves. Okay. And then when the legislation hit, we were really ready to pick it up. So it was a very, very good experience, but not just on the AI Act, but the whole 5 years of mandate focused on artificial intelligence. And then, of course, the AI Act is an important piece of legislation. So it was quite a journey.
Well, from a operational privacy professional's perspective, quite groundbreaking when we think about back in 2018, we had GDPR, which kind of set the stage for our own compliance program. So for us, was a really watershed moment to get something like the AI Act. And, you gave a play-by-play of what was happening during the trilogue and the other kind of, negotiations on your LinkedIn. I think everyone was really grateful for that kind of behind-the-scenes perspective. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced, either whether it was between conflicts between policymakers and industry? Talk a little bit about what you experienced on the ground.
Well, look, it's 2 years of negotiations at a minimum. So, depending on how much time I have, I can
you got a few minutes.
But I think that the main challenge was that this was such an important piece of legislation that I'm not going to go into the technicalities, but usually a file goes to a single committee. Mm-hmm. You have a main person in charge for the Parliament of that file, and then the other political groups in the Parliament designate their secondment, so basically shadow rapporteurs, as they're called. For this file, we had two committees, so two co-rapporteurs, and another 12 shadow rapporteurs, and a few other committees involved in different pieces of the legislation. So basically, it was about 40 MEPs working on the file.
Is that typical of a?
It's not. It's not. So I think that was one of the main challenges, because it's not just balancing out. If you're one rapporteur and with the 6 shadow rapporteurs, then you do politics and you balance out the interests of the different groups. If you have twice the lineup, then you have to think not just of the interest of the different groups, but also the cross interests of the committees.
Right.
So it really was navigating all these interests that was, okay, you asked for challenging. It was challenging, but it was also fun, right? It was like an interesting ride.
But was there one point where everyone was just kind of wanted their own perspective or their own input into that one point?
One point? You mean in substance?
Yeah.
Well, I think many moving parts in this legislation were very, very hard to negotiate. So, the definition of artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
That was very, very hard. Luckily, what we decided politically is we wanted to align, as much as possible internationally. So we worked with the OECD in parallel to kind of converge on the definitions, and that kind of got us out of what seemed to be a deadlock. Then prohibitions, what do you prohibit, what do you not? That was very, very controversial, especially on the political spectrum, left to right.
Especially if you're going to go as far as to actually prohibit a specific processing activity. Yeah.
Exactly. Then, the list of, what is high risk and what is not high risk, that was also very contested issue in Parliament, but also in the negotiations with Council later on. Then the whole discussion on generative AI and the establishment of the AI office, that wasn't a given. That's what Parliament added to the text, but it was an uphill battle. I'm very proud to say that it came from our office, from Dragos and myself, really wanting, a body that actually does EU-wide supervision of AI. But it had its challenges within Parliament and then in the negotiations with Council. So, multiple challenges along the way. But, again, all is well when it ends well, So it wasn't, it was a learning experience as it was a challenging experience.
Incredible to get that behind the scenes kind of perspective. Dan, my next question was, as a chief privacy officer, obviously I have a lot of relationships and dialogue with the CPO community, and we've already had to comply with things like the GDPR. We've had to do things like data protection impact assessments, conduct ROPAs, operationalize things like data subject access rights. There's been a lot of talk around how the AI Act might be adding a layer of additional burden and complexity from an operational perspective. I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the AI Act and the GDPR intersect in a number of ways, but they're complementary to one another. I wouldn't call it burden or complexity. What I would call it is, and the purpose of the AI Act was to come in with horizontal regulation that covers the loopholes and plugs in the holes that are not covering what AI systems, embedded in different things, could present as risks. The compliance is different for AI. So there is a part that deals with data, of course, with data management. But also the logic is a little bit different from the GDPR in that most of the obligations are with the providers of artificial intelligence systems, with those who build them, right? The obligations rest with them. Then those who deploy them, those who traditionally also do a data protection impact assessment, in some cases they have to do a fundamental rights impact assessment, and we took into account the fact that they might be doing a data protection impact assessment, and we said that they can be combined.
So that's good to hear that, GDPR requirements were part of that discussion and dialogue.
It was
so.
always there, and we tried to take the GDPR as a golden standard, and we start from there, build on top of it. Now, in terms of the profession, I think that, of course, the experience that you've got, doing the data protection impact assessment will make it easier for you and for the profession to transition into doing compliance for artificial intelligence. So that's, a good business case if you think about it.
Yeah.
But again, I wouldn't see them as adding burdens in so much as being complementary to one another. And we did know that when you are building an AI system, you have certain requirements that are not covered by the GDPR.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, as a chief privacy officer, I think the community is going to be really glad to hear that GDPR was taken into account, because that was one of our concerns. And you'll see, in the marketplace right now, there are a lot of roles that are speaking to, folks that have AI governance experience, and who better than to fulfill those roles than existing chief privacy officers? So
I would caution that it's not a shoe-in. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of learning and a lot of, building AI expertise, because the AI Act has more requirements than what we had for data protection. But it's a natural, it's
a good starting off point.
Exactly.
Well, Dan, this was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation and getting your insights from kind of behind the scenes and on the ground during the AI Act kind of negotiations. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ron. It was a pleasure talking to you. I think, you have a lot of work ahead of you, and you and the community, but good luck with that. Yeah.
We're ready for it.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the series premiere of Transcend Field Trips. I'm Ron DeJesus. See you out in the field.